All right, so hello and welcome to the Participation Live class. This is session number 14, which is awesome to even think that we are scooting right along here. Today we're going to be talking about arriving with healings and miracles and how do we recognize how that has already happened in our body, how we have already experienced that and where has that happened, what did that actually feel like, so that we can begin to participate with allowing our bodies and our minds and our life to be a space for that to continue. So we're going to begin today first by taking a moment to arrive with the Holy Spirit. And we want to do that by taking a moment to notice how we are held and supported by the place where we are seated. Let's go ahead and notice that together now this morning. And as you are noticing how you are held by the place where you are seated, we're invited to take a moment to recognize which part of our body feels the most held by our seat. And we're going to go ahead and put that down into our journal. You want to write down the body part. And we want to take a moment to help our brain to recognize, what does that quality of support feel like to you? And you want to circle that. And we're saying, this is God's living gift to me. This is God's living gift to me. And take a moment and you're allowing your system, allowing yourself to receive that. And then we want to take a moment to recognize which part of ourself is not yet able to receive that. And take a moment and just allow yourself to hold that area very tenderly. Which part of yourself is not yet able to receive what the Holy Spirit is providing? And you're just taking a moment to, again, just refresh that tenderness for that area. And then just notice what that feels like. We're going to go ahead and talk for a moment about what it's been like over the past week. How has your relationship with what is happening politically in our country, how has that changed? How has that shifted over the past week? Let's take a moment and talk about that. You guys are welcome to chime in if you want. What has changed in the way that you have been relating to the political things that are happening? So you guys may not be on here, I'm not sure. So for me, one of the things that has changed is I'm able to see more of the things that I find disturbing. Um, and I've had actual conversations with people who are going through the things that are happening and have been able to take the aspects of the experience that they are having and actually come home and sit with it in one of the rest practices. I've been finding that I can bring the things that are happening throughout the day, I can bring them into a rest practice and actually hold them, and within my experience, offering them rest and offering myself a capacity to rest in the face of it. And that's been more helpful, that I feel like I'm able to engage with it versus kind of seeing it from the outside and being overwhelmed by it or judging it. So that's been a big shift in my capacity over the last week. How about you guys? What have you noticed?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Um, I've had a little bit similar of being able to actually watch or view kind of what's going on without immediately having to turn it off and become overwhelmed. But I've needed to rest a lot more this week because I physically was feeling very, very weighed down by all of it, and I've actually been able to rest and to fall asleep. Um, Unlike before, that I haven't been able. My mind usually is running so much that I can't rest. But
Uh-huh.
um, I'm turning on the heating pad and the heated blanket, and I'm kind of cocooning myself in the spot, kind of in the dark, cold, with a candle and my salt lamp. I've been, just making things more supportive, and I feel like I've been able to sleep and rest a lot deeper than
Uh-huh.
before.
And
And
then
I've
when
been
you
able.
wake, I'm sorry, go
Go ahead.
ahead.
No, go ahead.
So then when you wake up, what is the difference when you're waking up from those rest practices? How do you feel different?
For me, I feel a little bit stronger and wider, such that
Mm-hmm.
it's not just all of this vibrating just kind of in my chest. It
Right.
is able to kind of integrate into my body, and I feel like I can then kind of keep moving throughout the day versus just collapsing under the weight of what I just, spent 30 minutes watching on YouTube or something.
Right.
So definitely feel more supported and open and capable.
Yeah. And your nervous system is able to like ride that wave into, like when we look at the um, infinite flow model, which is that circle cross, you're able to take in the challenge, I'm watching these things that were disturbing before that I couldn't even watch. You're actually taking it in, you're bringing it into relationship with being held and supported, you're resting deeply, and then you're waking up feeling more supported, open, capable, wider, stronger. So you're getting stronger, you're taking in more, and then also having more strength and more capacity versus how would you describe what it was before when you could only watch little bits, and then what was your system doing?
My system, I'd watch little bits and get probably about 30 seconds I could watch, and I would hop from one to the next to the next to the next, watching about 30 seconds and becoming overwhelmed, and I could physically feel it in my body, and it was very exhausting and overwhelming.
So it's exhausting and overwhelming, and it never gets held,
Yeah.
right? And this is like just what happens in our nervous system 101. This is happening with every quality of experience. We're talking about politics right now, but this is every quality of experience of stress or overwhelm. Trauma is just something that happens that's too much for me to process in one day, but I'm vibrating with that intensity and it's not able to be met, held, brought back into relating to God, resting, and then coming into the world in a new way and relating. Like I'm not able to do that. So it stays vibrating in my nervous system that way versus what Jessica's talking about, where she was able to watch more, but she created the safe space to come into. And I think it's that cultivation of those unique things in your place of rest and in your place of practice that begin to establish this cocoon. Jessica used the word, or like a cave of safety, or a place of refuge, whatever we want to name it. But as I create that, then I come to that, then everything begins to happen. I can receive the Holy Spirit, I can rest, I can hear God, and I can take new direction in my life from that place. But if we're struggling in the beginning, one of the things that we can do is like what she did, which is really start putting things in that space that make me feel, what would your word be, Jessica? Make you feel like what?
Oh, safe.
Safe. Yeah. So participants, as you're listening to this, we want to be thinking, I'm looking at my space. Is there anywhere I can make it safer? Is there anything else I can do that makes it feel even more safe? And then that can help us to really begin to establish this really solid foundation so that we can begin to be in this relationship with Christ. Because the Christ relationship is intense because I'm showing up with things in the world that I have not yet been able to show up with fully. And then I'm showing up with a whole big mystery of love, which is at first glance terrifying and unfamiliar to my nervous system. So the more that we can establish that place of safety, the more it makes everything else work. Thank you for sharing that, Jessica. That's awesome. Do you have anything
And
else you want to add?
I,
Anything that we?
um, I just realized I've been wanting, needing a desk and like something else for this room, and I ordered that last week and I put it all together. And after I did that and kind of moved some furniture, kind of the space emerged as kind of what it is now. And I actually have a place where I can practice every day, where my stuff is set up, where my
Yeah,
biomat is on the floor. And
yeah,
I didn't have that before. And after I got that set up, I just realized that's when I started to be able to do more of this.
yeah, yeah. It's like your command center, you know, where you can really come in and begin to participate in the work. That's really awesome. That's really awesome. Thank you for sharing all that because it is really just the blueprint. I don't want to say just the blueprint, but it is the blueprint for how we start building and establishing our place so that we can begin to do this process. Um, how about you, Veronica? What has changed for you over the last week as you're looking at some of the political things or maybe even anything that is evoking your system?
Um, I didn't really have a whole lot of stuff with the political system other than the fact that um, I there's a couple of podcasts that I listen to, and one of them comes from the UK, and it was three different very different kinds of people talking about what's going on in American politics.
Yeah.
And I was very interested in listening to that because I find that listening to our media is very different than listening to the media overseas,
Yeah.
because they have a different perspective. They don't they you know the question was, how is Trump's next, being in power again, how is it affecting the world?
Uh-huh.
So they were discussing that, and it was helpful to me to hear one gentleman who happened to be an American. I agreed with most everything he said, and then another gentleman who was from Russia, who came to Britain as a young man, um, and his perspective is much more the other way. And then there was just a regular Brit, but it gave me a feeling of like, okay, there's this on this side and there's this on that side, and how do I be able to be present with all the sides, because
Right.
um and I think some of the things that they talked about, I thought, well, they're what it helped listening to that was is that it helped me recognize that what I originally see as a wrecking ball of our democracy is something that this is a normal ebb and flow that occurs in our world, that things are created and then things are demolished. And that every time there's something else is new is coming into being, then this is what happens. It goes from order to chaos to then a rebuilding. And that's certainly something that I have experienced in my own life and throughout my life, all of that. Um, I found that as a result of that, I found myself experiencing more trust in God's process rather than the human process.
Hmm.
God
Hmm.
knows what He's doing. It looks scary as shit, and I'm scared 9/10 of the time anyway. But it was really more about, okay, if I'm going to be scared, then let me be able to be scared with you, you
Right.
know.
Right.
And like Jessica was talking about, I had gotten a thing for my. I have a large bed, and so on one part I sleep on, the other part I have a thing set up so that I can be sitting in comfort and am fully supported when I do my practice. And that's like my command center now,
Yeah.
and that's my place. Anytime I have anything going on, that's the place that I go to and say, okay, here I am, Lord.
Uh-huh.
Where Show me how.
Yeah.
Show me
What
how to. Go ahead.
what changed over the last week in the way that you practiced? Was there anything that changed for you over the past week?
I found that there seemed to be more capacity to be present with places of annoyance, places of pain and hurt, that before I would just want to flick it away and I didn't want to deal with it. And now it's more like, well, where else am I going to go? So I find that I feel like I have more capacity to be with.
And then
Um,
how has with that what has happened with your rest practices?
I find, first of all, I actually sleep. I mean, I don't sleep. I very rarely sleep.
Uh-huh.
But what has been happening is that I'm out like a light.
Uh-huh. For
And
your
that's
rest practices or in the evening?
both,
Okay.
both.
So you're sleeping a little bit more.
Yeah.
So the distinction, the reason why I'm asking, and I'm trying to help us to see this distinction, because essentially what he's saying is that when we are taking a hold of the live wire of the intensity that's flowing through us, maybe that's coming to us through a political experience, or maybe a conflict that we're having, or whatever it is that we're going through in our life. When I take hold of that live wire, if it's something that I'm normally relating to by having a story about it, or controlling it, or running away from it, or whatever I'm doing, but then I finally grab a hold of it, when I grab a hold of that and I really bring it into practice, it will drive all the other parts of our process deeper. So it's going to make me usually rest more completely. It's not ever going to not impact the way I'm resting. And if I will set boundaries around that rest and make sure I'm doing it, it's also going to drive capacity. It's going to drive that I'm able to be more present, more capable in doing something, whatever it is I'm working on, more able to be with my family, with my clients, with my neighbors, whatever it is that's happening. I might be moving towards a new skill set with a power that is unique or fresh, that's not something I'm used to operating from. So, but it has to start with me coming into relationships, saying yes to being in relationship with the live wire. And then we're tracking. We're tracking. One of the things Veronica's saying is how kind, not necessarily kind, but also probably kind, but how much am I willing to show up with the thing? Also, Jessica, you're talking about that same thing. I'm able to watch the political stuff for 30 minutes versus 30 seconds. So I'm taking in more of that energy because there's a place for that energy to flow. As soon as I'm taking a theme, which is what we're going to be talking a lot this weekend about, is like we're going to look at our life trajectory and we're going to look at the themes that are in that trajectory of our life, the qualities of experience that are like abandonment, or whatever the things are that we put up, labels that we put on it. As soon as I arrive with one of those and I'm holding it and I bring it through the process, then that pathway is open. Then when we're doing things like looking at what's happening with our politics, or when we're watching movies that then evoke it further, I want to grab a hold of that thing as soon as it comes up, because that's when it's the most powerful, and that's when it will transform my system the most. But it's really hard because our system is designed to be reactive, protective, giving a story about how it isn't, like going through all this other stuff rather than coming into this relationship. But as soon as we start establishing that consistent, safe place where I know I can go here, I know this is where I bring that lightning rod, and I know that it's safe for me to be here. And then I let the lightning rod move through me, and I'm in these different parts of the relationship, and it's safe for me to rest because I've scheduled time to do that. Nothing's going to come and interrupt that. And then I'm prepared to be open to taking a new action in the world. So each of these things are helping me to keep that pathway moving. And in today's class, what we're talking about is the pathway of healing and the pathways of miracles. But this is like the nuts and bolts of how we start building that. How that starts to happen is built on these 4 stages of the practice and the space in which we're practicing, so that it can begin to happen. Yes, there's miracles that happen in the world, and there's not all this preparation. People will say, well, God doesn't expect you to do all this stuff. Jesus has already done it all for you. It's already been done. And it's like, it's already been done for him. He did it. He's inviting us to pick up our cross and follow him. Yes, it already has been done, which means he gives us a blueprint for us to follow. And things will change in our lives. Miracles and healings will happen. We don't have to check all these boxes. There's a big part of that will happen without as much participation. But when we participate, something even greater can begin to happen. And so the things that you guys are already doing are helping to set the groundwork for that. All the things that we are all already doing are helping to set the groundwork. So the first thing we want to consider is, or I'm sorry, before I move on, what comes to your guys' mind? Does anything come up? Do you want to say anything about that? About what I just said? It's about establishing these pathways, and then the practice helps to establish the pathways. Do you guys have anything you want to add to that?
I feel like I can feel that there is a new pathway. Nick and I went to see this Candlelight string quartet concert last night at the Hippodrome. They did Beatles music, and it was dark, and it was just candles everywhere, and these 4 people from all over the world that have come together. And as I was sitting there in there, like, I started to feel more of a strength come from my stomach up through my chest, which I've never felt that clear space for things to move before.
Yeah.
But it took that kind of hour and a half of sitting there, and a room full of people, of everybody was just focused on this beautiful music in this like very calming space, before I even knew that was there, or it fully became there.
Yeah, and like that's your pathway, that clarity. When you take a moment and you feel that, what word comes to your mind? That pathway, what does it feel like in your system?
It feels like strength.
Strength. So that belongs to you.
Mm-hmm.
Your strength. And how would you finish that sentence? My strength for what?
It's a strength, and the capability also comes up just for my ability to sit in the harder parts and the more difficult things, and it feels like a bigger capacity with this strength there. More
Notice,
able.
yeah, and notice what is the difference about this quality of strength.
Mm-hmm.
Notice how, when you are strong in this way, how do your muscles respond?
Oh, everything kind of. How do my muscles? It's I don't know how to explain it. It's reorganizing in a way. I even stand up stronger. It's taller. I mean, I just feel like I stand up stronger, and
notice, so like let yourself experience
yeah.
that. You're standing up taller. And as your structure is taller and you're letting yourself feel what's happening in the midline, what do your muscles feel like when they're in that position? Do they feel, I don't want to put words in your mouth, just notice what they feel like. And how is that different from strength that you would try to possibly evoke in the past?
Yeah. I'm not sure. My muscles are unwinding.
Yes.
And they're not in that tense.
Yes.
Way they used to be.
That's the difference between your power, our power, and we have gyms where we do this. Our power is effort. God's power is being carried. God's power is open. There is not tension. There is not pushing. There is an experience of being carried. So there's an unwinding that happens because I'm opening. There's a reorganization that happens because I'm coming out of being clenched and forcing and pushing. But this is the position my body begins to get in order for it to heal. In order for things to heal around me, my consciousness heals, my body heals, my soul begins to heal its ancestral journey and what is supposed to be happening. because all of the things are starting to come into alignment. This is what it's like to be carried in Christ, that this Christ strength is coming alive in you. And that's very different from a worldly strength. It feels totally different in our bodies. And the thing that is challenging about it is that things then start happening, and then our brain recognizes something happened. And I want to do more of that. I want to make that happen. And then we jump in and try to make it happen. When I have been with people where there's healings that are occurring, it's coming from that place of being carried. It doesn't come from any effort, which then I freak out because I can't recreate it. When we're really doing it in Christ, and when we're really letting that space, letting ourselves be the space for that, I can't make it happen. All I can do is receive it.
I could definitely feel my brain freaking out a little bit this morning. Just not quite sure what kind of, almost very frantically, not recognizing whatever, what this is,
Right.
Doesn't look
Right.
familiar.
Right. And this is why in the practice, we're always saying, let our brain see the words you use: strength, capability, what the pathway for that actually is in your body. This is Christ's strength. This is Christ's capability. This is the pathway in my body where that is going to come alive. Because just like our other pathways of how I experience anger or frustration or overwhelm or fear, those are specific pathways in my body. And so are the Christ pathways, are specific pathways in the body. It's consistent. It's something that we can count on. And it's something that we can begin to lean on and build, participate in building. And so when we start to feel this, what he's wanting us to do in the diagram is you're actually drawing like even the difference between what does my strength look like and what does Christ's strength look like. Two different drawings. But that helps our brain to begin to learn how to relate to this in a new way. Because it's not, it shouldn't be woo-woo. It shouldn't be like this thing that is so unfamiliar. It should be as familiar as the way I breathe. I can't see my oxygen coming in and out. I can see my body moving as it does. We know a lot of science now to back up that that's what's happening when I'm breathing. In the olden days, they didn't have that science. They just trusted, like, this is me breathing. This is me bringing in life and releasing what I don't need anymore. Same is true with this. We're learning, how does my body actually receive this Christ peace? And when my body does, there's certain things that begin to happen. My craniosacral system engages and it starts to unwind my muscle structure. My parasympathetic system responds, which means it changes my breathing. It changes, like, all of these physiological cues start happening in my body when I receive the Holy Spirit. I can't see it that way, but I see how my body responds to it. And it is universally going to respond that way. It's just like my body is universally going to continue to stay alive when I can breathe oxygen. And then I can exhale. So we're here for this. This is like how we are built, is to be in relationship with this. When you look at some of your patterns in the past, some of your pain patterns, notice how that's related to your effort, your way of using your power. And as we get through the retreat this weekend, we're going to be looking at our timeline of our life, but we're also looking at our personality, our fight, flight, freeze, or our persecutor, victim, rescuer role. So you start to see how we behave, how that's my strength. That's what I do. And then here's me in Christ's strength. What is my personality then? Well, it's not even on those charts because it's something totally different. Really cool though, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything else you want to say about that? Sorry, I'm talking so much.
Oh, you're good. And then I slept really well last night for the first time in a long time. My heart rate actually came down and I slept really well. It's been probably 2 weeks since I've been able to sleep at night.
Yeah. Since the inauguration. Just kidding.
Yes.
Well,
No, it hasn't. My psychiatrist asked me how I was doing, and I was like, I'm not doing well.
yeah.
He goes, well, besides the constitutional crisis, how are you doing? I was like, oh, fine. I'm okay. Besides that, it's fine. And I traced back from when my Aura ring has told me that I just have not been well, and it's been since a couple days before the inauguration.
Yeah. Yeah. And appropriately so. So think about where you have come in 2 weeks. Look at what your nervous system has gone through in 2 weeks. How, and I guess this is the point I would love to transition with, but it's like this thing that you're feeling, this strength and capacity, you could not experience that if you had not been taking in this intensity. Because it's not like you haven't been showing up for practices.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've been doing it for a decade and you've gone through some big stuff. This is bigger stuff. And with bigger stuff, we get bigger reconciliation. We get bigger reconfiguration of our nervous system. So when you look at that, it doesn't make us necessarily want to go running open arms to the challenges, but it's something we can help our brain say that I can trust that I can embrace this challenge because it's going to change something in me. It's not going to be for nothing. It makes it just a little bit easier when the challenges come. Tiny, tiny bit. And then we just have to keep reminding each other of that, right?
Yeah, and it was in one of the like inspiration things that you had sent. I remember I've been watching kind of those more too, talking about um, trust in the kind of in the middle of it. It's when
Yeah.
you're in the middle of it hard to trust that there's going to be anything that's going to come out of it.
Yeah. I think that I have for myself, and I can see this about myself, this last week I've had two crazy, big, huge challenges that have been super scary, but they were new. I never had gone into that type of challenge before. And it was really scary, but it was also kind of fascinating because it was something I'd never done before. I was more willing to do that than coming to some of these other challenges that are familiar, like financial challenges or my clientele shifting or things breaking down around the house that seem like there's no way I'm going to be able to repair this. Those challenges are familiar. And so I have a harder time because in my brain, I want to go to, I've already done this one. And so it takes me a couple days to be willing to like really take that in because I'm kind of more angry about it. Where things that are newer, I can be with it a little easier, which I would think it should be the reverse because like I've already done it, but who knows? I'm not sure. You guys might do it in a different way, but for me, I definitely get a little frustrated when it's something that is familiar, but the new stuff is interesting. Veronica, how about you? What type of things have you noticed? Um, I guess we're kind of talking about healing, things that are healing, capacities that are healing. I see my mom just joined us too. Hey, mom.
Hello.
Veronica's thing looks like it It may not be working. Veronica, are you there?
I am here.
Okay.
Can you hear
Um,
me?
I can. For some reason, it has like a exclamation point over you. Um, what type of what ways can you feel your nervous system changing or healing, or maybe there's something else that's healing that is different for you?
First of all, I wanted to address this, what you were talking about as far as the old familiar places that are challenging, that I have basically just kind of tried to shove them to a side and wanted to do what looked more interesting to
Right.
me, my brain. And when I sat down to do practice, it was very clear that I was meant to do one of the things that's been 40 years old, you know, and that because it's such a fundamental thing.
Yeah.
And I think that the fact that I was finally willing to go there again, because I thought, well, I already did that. Well, yeah, I'm probably going to have to do it another 120 million times, but um, because I was willing to do that, I was able to then um, be more present with the client of mine that is concerned about dementia. She's in a study right now, and so I was with her for 6 hours on Monday, and she was freaking out, and I was before I would have tried to fix it, you know. It was very clear that that was not my job. Mine was not to fix it. My job was to simply be present with her and hold her anxiety
Yeah.
with the Holy Spirit, because otherwise I would have tried to be in there doing something about it, but that was not what I was meant to do. I think
Yeah.
that, and as a result of that, I think I've been a little bit more, I mean, there's been several things that have been old that I have just shoved aside, that I'm finally willing to bring them to practice.
Yeah.
And it's about bloody time.
Well, and it's kind of cool though too, because it's like as you establish the safety and as you establish your rhythm with the practice, then all of a sudden it's like we're opening a dam that's been shut, and that dam is the thing that is the gateway to our healing. Like I have to let the stuff in because that's the fuel then that can then drive this whole process.
Mhm.
Things that we've carried for years, you know?
Yeah, no kidding.
I also noticed I've been sick for probably 3 weeks now, and I never get sick. I feel like as this is happening, I'm feeling things come from out of my lungs and my kidneys and my muscles and my
Mhm.
throat. And at first I was freaking out and what should I be taking? What am I doing wrong? Why am I not feeling well? And then I just finally was like, maybe I just need to rest. Um, but that part has been scary, because anything medically that happens with me that's different, my blood test results are kind of wacky, and so it almost feels like my body itself is kind of being rebuilt, if that
Yeah.
makes sense,
Yep. Yep.
Yep.
which is weird and a little bit unnerving.
Yeah. Right. Because when we're coming out of this state of bracing so tightly and things start to open and reconfigure, then the body starts offloading what it's no longer needing. Like the body can then begin to do its work to clean things up. Mom, how about you? What over the last week, like what types of things are you noticing changing in your capacity?
I actually don't know that I have noticed anything changing yet. However, I just keep on trying to keep on. Like it took me a half hour to finally get into the seminar that I've been waiting to get into all day. So this was kind of strange. I had to re-register today. So I
Huh.
guess I'm a little bit frustrated with my telephone, and I had all sorts of emails on there, but it wasn't the one that gave the link to the time today. I had
Yeah.
yesterday's. So, I don't know what I did. I don't know if I wiped it out accidentally or what, but I found a way how to get back in it though. So I
Yeah.
don't know. But as far as the capacity goes, I've got such a little circle of where I'm living now that for the last 3 weeks I've been ill, with influenza A, and finally just going to start getting out of the house probably tomorrow. I have a doctor's appointment, so we're going to have to go and see him. But otherwise, I haven't been around a lot of people, and I've just been trying to, you know, learn as much as I can by watching all the videos and reading and doing your scriptures and the songs and everything, and taking time, and it's, of course, I have time, but for some reason the day flies by,
Right.
and the time isn't as much as what I think.
So
So
I
I
have,
think I'm going ultra slow in everything
well,
I do, going
well,
backwards maybe.
I don't know. I have to ask you a question, Mom, because this is how many how many practices and things do you think you watch in a day? The last week, how many things do you
Oh
think
gosh.
how many? Because you've told me, and it's,
Well, it's
what do you
probably
think?
been 10.
A day.
Well, oh, not a day, but probably, 10 complete ones, maybe
Yeah.
more, maybe 15,
Yeah.
but I
Um,
can't keep it all in my head, so it's like,
well, but I just want to say for everybody else on here, I'm doing one. Veronica, Jessica, how many are you guys doing?
As far as practice is concerned,
Yeah, like practice and then also learning something new, like looking at something new every day.
probably about 4.
Jessica, how about you?
It depends on the day. Sometimes it can be 2 or 3 or 4, and some days it might be 1.
Right.
Yeah.
mhm.
So, Mom, even though you're sick, like you've been sick, but you're also doing like this major immersion in the languaging of this, what it means. You're doing external research, like you're going and looking up
Yeah.
definitions of stuff. Like you're doing like all this stuff. And so when we talk about capacity, it's like capacity is also just the ability to immerse yourself in this. This is an active thing. It's not like watching a movie. And you've also been watching the Passion of the Christ stuff too, which you've gone
Yeah.
through two times,
Yeah.
two times, and done the stuff and done research on the different things. So it's like
Yeah.
this is active. This isn't like watching a TV show or I watch like a season of shows. I'm sorry,
No.
my guinea hen. She's really talking.
No, I
Little
I love
bit,
hearing her though.
little bit. She's telling stories out there,
She's
but
singing.
she's teaching the
Jane,
children.
I am just in awe, Jane, of your perseverance. I
Yeah,
just,
Well, I
I,
I certainly have had that, and that's I think a gift I've had my whole life.
yeah,
I'm, tenacious of trying different things and trying the best.
yeah.
And I'm keep going, but see, I feel like I'm behind. I don't
But
like
you're
that
not
feeling of being behind,
right.
but I feel that, because I
Yeah,
just and it's still hard for me to answer questions. It's like, okay, come on, what are you gonna, I'm talking to Jesus now. What am I supposed to be getting out of this? You
right,
know, tell me something.
right,
Tell me loud enough that I can hear it. And
right.
actually, he did today. He
What did
did
he
say
say?
one thing through my prayer practice today, so
What did
that
he
was
say?
good. He just said, "Take my hand."
There
Very,
you go.
very simple. Take my hand. You know.
And what did that feel like?
Hmm. It felt like a little bit of fear,
Yeah.
but also trusting
Yeah.
and wanting to go.
Yeah. And notice, where do you feel it? Where does that happen in your body?
In my heart.
Yeah. Notice where and watch what happens. That's the Christ pathway in your body. And the chimes and the wind and the birds are like just really loud. I don't know if you guys can even hear me, but
Oh, yeah,
that's the
we can
Christ
hear you.
pathway in your body. That pathway is your, do you hear these birds? Your physiology changing because you're saying, I want this. You are tenacious. You are showing up and you're saying, I want this. And then here it comes. I mean, this bird is like right here singing in the window at you.
It's pretty.
So
That's nice.
just feel that, Mom, like that connection that belongs to you. And when we talk about healing and we talk about miracles, Jesus is saying it's built on these pathways. As we are participating with Christ, it's built on these pathways. And as we show up, we're met. And as we show up, we're met.
I'm thinking
You're thinking about what?
what you just said
Yeah.
as far as, because when I was looking at the study sheet, I went back to like two things that had happened to me years ago. Like one of them, I was only 8,
Yeah.
and the other one was when I was working. But it was just, but yeah, I don't know for sure that I'm even in the right realm of what you were asking, I
Yes,
guess.
we are,
You know,
because it's like what he's wanting to say is when you have something that has healed, what did it start with and then where did it go? Like, what did you start with and then how did your
what
body,
what
or
it
how did
what it started with was when I was 8 and I fell out of a tree
yeah.
and ended up with the spike of the tree. It was a palm tree,
God.
and I fell. I scratched my legs and tummy and stuff, and I looked down and went, "Oh, I had a thorn from the tree. You know how a palm tree kind of grows with those spikes?
Yeah.
Well, I thought I was going to be a monkey and climb up the spikes.
Yeah.
So I got halfway up the tree and, of course, fell out. And
Uh-huh.
I had one of those spikes in my hand, my
Huh.
right hand. So I go running home to my mother, and she doesn't take me to the doctor. She brings the pliers out and pulls this 2-inch spike out of my hand. And later on, as we were talking, when I was older, she was like, "Oh, I probably shouldn't have done that." But at the time, that's what she thought to do. And I can
Right.
remember vividly seeing 3 or 4 drops of blood on the floor, on the ceramic or the tile floor of our trailer. And she took some bandage and put one on one side and one on the other and wrapped it up. I never got any infection. She never poured anything in there to clean anything out. And I do not have a scar on my hand. It was just like in the right spot of the hand, apparently. It didn't damage my hand at all. So I always think that's like a miracle healing,
Right.
you
So
know.
so that's exactly what he's talking about. So when you think of that now and you look at your hand now in your whole body, what do you feel? Where do you experience that? You're looking at your hand, but what do you feel as you are able to say, I had a miracle healing in my hand? Where do you feel that?
Well, to tell you the truth, I'm not feeling it. I don't really feel that anything in my body, that I guess because I've gotten so used to that it's okay, but now it's replaced with neuropathy and tingling and other
Not that.
pain in the hand,
Not
you
that.
know.
Not that. Not that.
So it's
That's not
different.
what I mean. I mean, feel yourself sitting there and
And looking at my hand right now.
it's not like I'm saying feel the change in your hand. It is
Oh,
feel that your hand went through, that you experienced that. That was real. That happened.
mm-hmm. And I
And as
feel
you,
very grateful that I didn't get infection in it,
okay, so grateful
you
is
know.
one thing.
And the other thing was I feel I have a lot of empathy for my mother because she did what she thought she should be doing, you know, at the
Those are
time.
two,
But and I can kind of feel that in my heart. It's kind of a heart thing, a connection with my mom, you know. But, you know, I'm
so
probably just not getting it.
no,
I don't
no.
know.
If it is, it's because I'm not explaining it. It's because I'm not explaining it in a way that is landing. It's not about you not getting it. It's about being able to feel that possibility, like that possibility. You are capable. Your system has already done it. And if we really slow our lives down enough and we start really looking at everything, things like this are happening all the time. We're just moving so fast we don't feel that possibility. We don't feel that capacity that our body is able to do that, because we are hyper focused on, is it right or is it wrong, is it pain, is it not pain. Like, we have all these lists of all these things that we're focusing on, rather than the fact that this is what we are built for. And you didn't have to have any your mom just took the thing out and wrapped it,
Yeah.
and and if you said, like, because you said, I see that as a miracle healing.
Yeah.
When you say those words and you are feeling yourself, when you say those words and close your eyes and feel in your body, I experienced a miracle healing. Where do you feel the truth of that in your body?
Oh, in my heart.
That's it.
It's always in my heart.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what he's wanting us to feel. I experienced a miracle healing. Other things, like, if as you allow that to spread, you feel it in your heart. It's emotional, it's transformative. Feel what starts to happen in your body. Feel what starts to unfold in your body when you allow yourself to receive that power of that. That's what God's giving you. What begins to happen?
Actually radiating warmth.
Yes, that's a power happening in your body. That's a physiology that's happening in your body. Things are changing in your body just in the recognition of that. That happened when you were 8 years old. And the
Yeah.
physiology does not care that that happened when you were 8 years old. The physiology comes alive with this. Watch what happens when it radiates out. Just because God gave it to us 2 weeks ago or a year ago or 70 years ago does not diminish the power of it. So, as I say, this is coming alive. Jessica's experience of it coming alive in her gut and in her heart, that is with her forever and will build upon that forever. And we don't know what happens after that. We don't know where that takes us in this Christ mystery. But Jesus has said, recognize it and receive it and rest in it and claim it and recognize it and become as familiar with that in your system as you are with the hands that you look at and you can see. This is as powerful as the breath that comes into our body and the breath that leaves our body. This is as powerful, if not more. This is the foundation of which we stand on, of our life. And we get to participate with it. And it impacts our physiology more profoundly than anything else we're doing. No vitamin, no medication, no thing can bypass how powerful this is. But our not seeing it and our hyper focus on our fear and our brokenness can block it, does block it. And what he's inviting us into, and where I'm struggling, is realizing that this power is greater than anything else that we are facing. All this other stuff is Mickey Mouse stuff. Clients canceling, bills being paid late, things like Mickey Mouse. It's like tiny compared to this. And I'm still struggling with trying to receive it. I'm still struggling with trying to receive it. But notice what happens when you name that. How would you describe, Mom, the difference between recognizing that versus the literal thing that happened to your hand? I don't know how to explain the distinction between those two. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do, and I think to me it's like when I just like say, well, this is what happens. There's no feeling attached to it.
Right.
It's neither good or bad. It's just that's what happened, and wow, it was weird, and that kind of stuff. But the other way, when I felt it in my heart, to me it's an emotion, but it's also physical.
Yeah.
And then of course it affected my breathing because everything always does that.
Yeah.
With the heart and the lungs and stuff. So yeah, it kind of radiates out. My question is, when you feel that, is it always going to come into the heart? Or like with Jessica, it came into her stomach, you said.
Yeah. Everybody.
So it can go, is it different things for different folks?
Yeah.
Or is it always the same type of feeling going
Nope.
into your body?
It's unique to you, like your fingerprint,
Yeah, okay.
like your hair color, like your eye color. It's unique to everybody. And
Yeah.
what he says is everybody feels it in their own unique way, but
Huh.
how you feel it is how you will always feel it.
Okay, that's interesting.
And that's
That's
why we're
that's kind
invited
of
to
cool.
become right. And that's why we're invited to draw it and become familiar with it, because
Yeah.
it's your beautiful love letter between you and God. It's how God is expressing into you personally, which is different from how it expresses to me personally, which is why he has us do the practices the way he has us do. He has me write something and put up a Bible verse and put up a song, but it's up to you to experience that and then write it and express it in what stands out to you. It's unique to every single one of us. And if we got together and we looked at our journals, just think of how powerful that is. It's different. It's different for every single one of us
Yeah.
because it's supposed to be. And it's not God this way all the time, one way, looks like this, talks like this, says only this. God's speaking to each of us just like he did to you today. Take my hand. And when you talk about not much has changed. I don't see much has changed. I haven't built much capacity. That's what our brain says. And yet, look at what is true in your life. You're hearing Jesus talk directly to you. You're practicing 1,000 hours a day, like all over the place, practicing, researching, active in it, asking me questions about it. Compared to if you go back 2 months ago, what were you doing 2 months ago compared to this? Totally different.
Yeah, totally.
Totally different engagement. Jessica and Veronica, or Jessica, I know Veronica had to jump off. What stands out for you as you hear my mom talking, like going through her process of feeling it? What were you able to feel in yourself as she was feeling hers growing? She might have had to go too.
Oh no, I'm here. I was just
Okay.
thinking, as she felt like how things are changing and her capacity growing, do you mean?
Feeling it
What?
come in the heart, like,
Oh, I see. Yeah.
yeah. As I listen to my mom, I feel my own getting stronger. I wonder
Hmm.
what your experience was as you listen to her talking about hers. What happens with your experience?
I felt like mine got wider And it also made me laugh because when you first said, I don't think anything has changed. And I was like, oh, a lot has changed. And I thought it was cool to listen as you two talked through it, because so many times I feel the same way. And then we start talking and it's like, well, everything has changed. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's so hard. It's so hard to see it in yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and it just feels like you do it all day long and nothing's different. So
Yeah.
for me, that helped me kind of see what's changed and listening to what's changed for you, Jane. So
Right.
that was really, I feel like it was really helpful for my system to sit while you two were doing that and
Oh, that's good.
feel it in myself as well. And
Yeah.
I thought it was,
Yeah.
Because as we learn, like as we're learning in our own private practice, that's one quality of learning. But then as we are listening to each other, what's happening in each other's experience is also happening in our own experience. It's just happening with different circumstances. So it helps us to see ourselves more deeply when we can hear each
Mhm.
other, what each other are doing, because we're all doing the same thing. We're all resisting this in pretty much the same way. We just have different words. We just have different ways. Like I might eat cookies and like somebody else might go watch a bunch of movies. Like we're all doing different things to resist it because we're going to resist it because it's so unfamiliar and we don't really even recognize it because nobody's ever taught us how to recognize it in this way. So great class, guys. I think the biggest takeaway is what we're really invited to do is the worksheet that we have for class. It's like draw the challenge or the thing that was broken, and then draw what the healing feels like. I healed from this thing, or this was a miracle that happened. Before it was death, and over here, something totally different. And what does that feel like that miracle is possible?
and
Draw
for
it.
me, the fact that it's on my left side where my cancer was, and just how stuck all of that was, and how you were drawing how stuck things were on my papers for like a month before we found out that there was cancer there. And that's the side that's feeling strength and that's opening up more
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah, because, and I think that's the thing, and I'm gonna have to keep telling myself this. It's like the more intense the thing that's coming in, the more intense the thing that is broken, the more intense the healing and the power. Whatever part of my body goes through something like that one time when I nailed my finger to the wall. And I
Oh,
think you were the one
Yeah.
that came in after that, Jessica. I think it was your session that was after that, and it was like right through my pinky. But then when I was working on you, there was so much, everything was happening through my pinky when it was like completely weak and it couldn't work. But that's where God was working through. I mean, I could feel it. It was like so bizarre. But that is the way it works. And it's going to be interesting as we get further through the Passion of the Christ. I know we got to stop here. I'm sorry I'm going so far over, but as we get further through the Passion of the Christ and we're looking at, yes, on the outside, this is happening to Jesus, but he tells me over and over and over again that inside, the Holy Spirit was giving him something so much more profound. That's how he was able to be there and do that. And that's what we're invited to do, is to step into that mystery. I think a little bit is telling us class is over. So you guys, what a great class.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for sharing. It's just really, really beautiful. And I'm really honored to see that this is working so amazing. It's so amazing. So I love you guys, and I'll talk to you tonight if you'll be on. If not, the class will be recorded. If you're not going to be able to be on tonight for the movie thing, but there's something that you want to add to what your experience has been in watching these first 4 scenes in the Passion of the Christ, feel free to text it to me or leave it on the voicemail, and I'll include it in the class tonight. Okay?
Nice.
I'll see you guys later. Have a great day.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you very
Bye.
much. Bye-bye.